Welcome into the Bonesville Pregame Podcast. Al Myatt, joined by Kevin Monroe. Kevin, of course, an outstanding defensive back in his playing days at East Carolina, culminating with that illustrious 1999 team. And Kevin offers his insights on Pirate Radio Network, and he'll be viewing the game from the press box on Saturday night as the East Carolina Pirates play host to Brigham Young, and Brigham Young just outside the top 25 coming into Greenville, and East Carolina coming off a very thorough 38-0 win last week at Coastal Carolina. 5 turnovers for the Pirates. They sputtered a little bit offensively in the first half, but finished strong, 38-0 win over the Chanticleers. And East Carolina has some momentum going into that big matchup on Saturday night by virtue of that win at Coastal, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that this is probably the biggest game on the Pirates schedule, just based on, a Power 4 opponent coming in the Dowdy-Ficklen, almost ranked opponent, as you said, just outside top 25. It's a big deal. I think Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium will be rocking. It's hard to say how good BYU is. They start off the season with Portland State, FCS opponent, and they beat them handily, 69-0, I believe. I had some incentive to watch the BYU game, and so I did watch that game, and I was very impressed with BYU's offense. I mean, they were stifling. I will preface that by saying Stanford has some quarterback issues. I think the quarterback played much better this past week, but those first 2 weeks versus Hawaii and then versus BYU, he really, really struggled. And so they just could not move the football at all. But BYU's defense was stifling. Offensively, they didn't overly impress me. I'll say that. I think they're good on offense, but they didn't overly impress me. So to say that they're a top 25 opponent, I think the Pirates can compete this week. I don't think this is an opponent that's going to come in and just roll over East Carolina, and that's I guess verified by the fact that the spread is, I think, 7 or 7.5 right now in favor of BYU. So I think even the prognosticators there in Vegas expect this to be a good game.
I'm sure that East Carolina is going to be well prepared and inspired by the crowd. So I'm looking for a favorable outcome for the Pirates. And that win at Coastal, Kevin, tell you a little bit about it from a personal standpoint. W.A., my son, he was there taking pictures, and I went to the game with him, and we were initially supposed to park in the KK lot. Mm-hmm. And we were told that's full. You need to go to another lot. It was actually the lot outside the basketball arena. And from my limited knowledge of the Coastal campus, I would say the basketball arena is on one side of the campus and the football stadium is on the other side of the campus. Right. And so that involved a rather lengthy walk to the stadium. I did notice that it seemed like 90% of the Coastal students were dressed in black. And they were, it appeared to me that they had some kind of blackout going. And looking at the overall stands, I don't think all the fans got the memo on that maybe, but they did make an effort to have a blackout. But most of the fans for Coastal had left the stadium by the time that contest concluded. And the colors that were in there, and the fans were chanting purple and gold. So that was the colors that mattered at the end of that ball game. A little bit mystified because, Coastal has been a representative of the Sun Belt Conference and won some championships in that league. And they were in the Big South Conference before that and performed very well in that league. But they're obviously down a little bit this year. And you talked about Stanford, maybe with some issues at quarterback. They have really apparently got some issues there at Coastal. But to East Carolina's credit, the last 2 games, they have played outmanned opponents. And the challenge sometimes in those situations is not to play down to the level of your competition,
That's
to
right.
play to a standard of your program. And I thought the Pirates have done that very well the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree, and I mentioned that I was on the road, visiting with my son, and so I didn't get a chance to watch the game live, but had a chance to see some highlights and look at the stats, and it looked like Caden Hauser is continuing to play well. 28 for 37, 293 yards. He did have his first interception of the year, but just completing passes at a very high level, very efficient, running the offense, running the football. 49 carries for 204 yards, right at about 4 yards a carry. Still probably not where the Pirates would want it efficiency wise, but I think they're getting better each game with running the ball. And to be quite honest, I think that John David Baker would prefer to throw the football when he can. And so if that means sometimes throwing the wide receiver screens, the bubble screens, things like that, and using those as run plays, he's willing to do that. Just get the ball in the hands of his playmakers quick, because he's got quite a few playmakers at the receiver position. But I do know that with that three-headed backfield, they were all preseason Doak Walker candidates. He wants to get those guys going. Don't know that this is the week to do that, because this is a very good BYU defense. But I do like the fact that they're steadily getting better, and they look to be a little bit better this past week versus Coastal. And as you said, playing a team that you are favored to beat, and not only beating them, but beating them handily, is good. A good job by the Pirates, and I'm sure it will give them confidence coming into this Saturday.
You had asked me about the running game prior to the podcast, and you were with your son Marcus, and I'm not sure if I believe Butter made the trip also.
Yep, whole family, yes, sir.
Out to Stanford last week. I was telling you, I turned that game on when I got back from Coastal, and Stanford was down 17-6, and they scored, had a lengthy pass go for a TD, and then had a pick six, and they were back in the game and leading, and eventually won against Boston College. But the game at hand with Brigham Young, the running game for the Pirates, and I know that Blake Harrell wants to run first, even though the passing game has been prolific to this point. But there were rushing touchdowns. Parker Henry and Mike Wright Jr. and TJ Engelman Jr. all ran for scores. And, Mike Wright, I don't have a whole lot of concerns about the backup quarterback position this year. I think he brings a lot to the table.
I completely agree. Getting a transfer in who's a veteran guy who's played some games. He's got good size on him. He runs well, one of the better runners on the team, but also can pass the football. And bringing him in as a senior, they had to promise him opportunity to play, and I think we're seeing it. I think we're seeing them kind of mix him in, running the ball, throwing it some, but just being on the field a lot. And so him being on the field a lot and being used to the environment, and hearing the offensive plays called in the huddle while he's out there, I think it only adds an extra dimension to what the Pirates are trying to get done. So yeah, I'm even though he's only thrown 5 passes this year, we've seen what he can do in preseason scrimmages and his opportunities. So yeah, I'm excited about having a backup that's ready to go if his name's called.
I think the theory with the East Carolina running game, you got Marlon Gunn, London Montgomery, and Parker Jenkins kind of in that rotation there among your top backs. I think one thing about that, the theory is to keep somebody fresh, but you get a back in a rhythm, and he gets going, and then he can have some big production. And we're not really giving anybody that chance at this point. That's just an observation on my part. But Caden Hauser, he's got a little bit of that Holton Ahlers running element in him, and I would like to see him back off and and learn how to slide a little more maybe. But and I think they've kind of pulled him back a little bit from his running tendencies. But passing game looks good. Yannick Smith, Anthony Smith, Brock Spalding. You've got the transfer. Can't call his name at the moment, but all of those guys potentially big play receivers that the BYU defense, which incidentally has not allowed a touchdown this season. And
Yep.
if they have one of these gimmick wagers about that streak staying intact, I would think that would be a good possibility for some Pirate fans this weekend. I don't think East Carolina is going to be held out of the end zone.
No, I agree. And Jaquez Petaway is that transfer you were talking about from Oklahoma, and he just hasn't gotten going quite yet. Not sure what all is going on there, but I know they'd like to get him going, get him more involved in the offense. Steve Logan used to always say, if we can get 150 yards rushing and 250 passing, we will have achieved our goals going into each game. And so the Pirates right now are averaging about 135 rushing, so that would kind of be under that number. But they're at 346 passing. And so that's the difference is that they're able to pass and get some of those yards through the air that they lack on the ground. So close to 500 yards a game total yards. And so it's been pretty impressive what they've been able to do offensively. I think, they would love to be able to open up that running game. And I think as the season goes on, I think the running game will be more of a factor. We know what London Montgomery can do, but he's only averaging 3.6 yards a carry, and he's a back that can certainly do much better than that. And Parker Jenkins heard so many good things about him, and so and obviously Marlon Gunn over the years, we've seen what he can do. And so those three with Mike Wright Jr. as well running the football at times, they're going to prove to be a formidable rushing offense. They just got to get that run blocking going better. I think this offensive line has played pretty well, but it's mostly been in pass blocking. They've got to be better opening up holes. So I expect that to get going, but as of now, the passing game is where it's at. Spalding probably carried us the first two games. Anthony Smith was the guy last game. Yannick has played well in the last two games. So those guys are all stepping up and playing well. So offensively, as you said, they're not going to have any problem scoring points. I think this is an offense that can score with anybody. Now that is going to be tested because I think BYU is one of the better defenses in the country. They swarm, they rush the passer very well. They're run stoppers. They're giving up 1.5 points a game, which it sounds insane, but that's because they shut out Portland State and held Stanford to 3 points. I will say though that Stanford just played really bad offensively. I think the Pirates will be better offensively than Stanford was. So I expect them to score a few touchdowns against this BYU offense, especially home at Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium when they have the crowd on their side. But we'll see. They definitely have the firepower to do it.
Well, John David Baker has been looking at the tapes, and he'll be figuring something out, I'm sure, for the offense for East Carolina. We talked about the running back rotation. And East Carolina, to a degree, has a rotation with place kicking because Noah Perez, Andrew Conrad, and Nick Mazie have all done some kicking. And with this BYU series, East Carolina leads 2 wins to 1. And the last game in 2022, Andrew Conrad kicked a 33-yard field goal to win the game for East Carolina out in Provo, Utah. And so he certainly came through in the clutch in that situation. And if it comes down to a field goal, we'll see what could potentially happen on a Saturday night in Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium. Place kickers and their confidence, that's something that East Carolina has dealt with to a degree in recent years, but at least there's depth at that position.
Yeah, definitely there's depth. And as we came out of game one, I think Pirate fans were happy with Mazie and thought he did a great job. And we didn't really have any idea why the switch was made to Conrad, but Coach Harrell just said that Conrad had kicked better in practice the Campbell week, and so he was the guy. And then Andrew Conrad came in and he played well. And so Noah Perez is kind of mixed in there as well, but you don't really know week to week who the guy's going to be. I guess if you just take a look at it as who's having the best week of practice. That's kind of the way to go. But at least all three guys are remaining ready to go, and they've been relatively effective when they've been called on. The Pirates have not been in any real crunch situations as of yet where they needed the kicker. Obviously, in the NC State game, there was a big kick made there, but it wasn't to win the game or anything. And so hopefully when that name is called and it's time for somebody to step up and win one, all three of those guys will be ready.
Maisie did have a big kick at State. You're right, because that was at an angle with some length on it, and it was to get ECU within a possession in that comeback bid in Raleigh. A name that we're going to hear, Morgan Ehlers will probably call it out quite a bit on Saturday night for BYU, is Bear Bachmeier. He's a true freshman quarterback for the Cougars, and Coach Blake Harrell noted that it's somewhat unusual to see a quarterback wearing number 47. That's more like a fullback number, but he does have some running tendencies that might be comparable to a fullback. And his older brother, Hank Bachmeier, finished his career at Wake Forest after stops at Louisiana Tech and Boise State. And then his middle brother, Tiger Bachmeier, he was at Stanford. He's a wide receiver. He's not been a big factor in the offense thus far this year. He has one catch for 8 yards, but he's a junior. He transferred to BYU from Stanford this year. And then, of course, the quarterback that we might have been expecting to see after an 11-2 season last year for BYU, Jake Retzlaff, he ended up transferring to Tulane. He had some issues off the field there in Provo, and rather than serve a suspension, I think he packed up and headed to New Orleans. And he had 4 touchdowns rushing against Duke last week in a win over the Blue Devils. And the Pirates will see him at Tulane on a Thursday night later this season. Of course, immediately they're dealing with Bear Bachmeier.
Yeah, Bear is he's a good player. He's a different guy. He wears 47 at the quarterback position, and it's because it was one of the first numbers he ever wore as a kid playing Pee Wee football, where he played fullback and linebacker. And he just took on that mentality of hard-nosed, I don't know. I want to say Ronnie Lott. Obviously, Ronnie Lott was a safety, but just that linebacker mentality and fullback mentality of somebody who just wants to stick his head in there and hit you. And so he plays quarterback like that. He's only attempted 38 passes this year. He's very efficient for the most part, completing 63% of his passes. But they want to run the football, and that's what they want to do. And so, as a true freshman, at times, when it's time to pass the football, he holds the ball too long. He was sacked quite a few times against Stanford. So the Pirates will have opportunities when the defense is on the field and Bear is out there to confuse him a little bit, to run some different sets that maybe he hasn't seen, that Portland State wasn't able to run, and that maybe they saw from Stanford. So this is why I think this game will be close, because they don't have a veteran quarterback that's been through this. He came over just in the spring from Stanford, and so he's kind of learning on the go to be out there as a true freshman quarterback. He's doing well. They're 2-0, but he's certainly not going to pass the ball to beat the Pirates based on what I've seen in person and on film. He's the kind of guy that's going to kind of get you 3 yards in a cloud of dust. He's going to run it. He has 17 rushing attempts this year in the 2 games. But he's also gonna just kind of lead this offense as the general. And they've got a running back in LJ Martin that has 241 yards through 2 games, 120-yard average, 9.3 yards per carry, which is pretty impressive. They're going to hand him the ball. They want to run the football, 312 yards a game, rushing the ball. That's what they want to do. And so if the Pirates are unable to stop the rush, it'll be a long game because they'll have the ball for a long time, just kind of marching it down the field. If they can stop the rush, which they've proven to do against other teams, and force Bear into 3rd and longs and make him throw the ball to win, I like the Pirates' chances there.
Very good. Kevin, let's talk a little bit about what Stanford will be dealing with coming into Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium. and they've played 2 games at home before a supportive crowd. And then you take a true freshman quarterback on the road in Greenville and talk about that adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, you got time zone change. You've got the crowd noise, the boneyard, the student section. Just a lot going on for BYU, and they're favored to win. And so you come in, with the pressure on you to come in and get it done. They want to break the top 25. They know defensively they'll be solid, but there are some questions about this offense. So we'll see how I know their coach will have them prepared, but we'll see with this young group of guys if they can come in with these expectations, with the time zone change, a long trip, and be ready to play, as opposed to the comfort of being at home, FCS opponent, and then an opponent that's struggling on offense the first 2 weeks, and see if they can perform.
And they are now a Big 12 team. They joined the Power 4 conference before last season. I'm not certain what that means in terms of officiating. Oftentimes in a non-conference game, the visiting team will have officials from their conference, and that may be the case. But Brigham Young right now is still a playoff contender. They're unbeaten, and this would be a game that could potentially help them in that bid to get into the CFP.
Yeah, and they finished last season with a bowl victory over Colorado. That was a huge win for them. They've come into this season now 2-0. I mean, they're kind of rolling confidence-wise. The fan base is really rallying behind this program. And you may know this about BYU, but fans may not know it. Even though it's a Mormon college that obviously has their religious beliefs and the strict rules, they love their athletics and they support their athletics. They've got the #1 high school basketball player in the country going there. I think they paid him $7 million a year this past offseason to go there. And they've got a few other players. They're trying to be big time players in basketball, and they're doing the same thing in football. This is a university that's got several billionaire alumni, and they are ponying up and putting money towards the NIL and all that stuff. Now, things have changed a little bit now with the way revenue share is changing, and NIL, it won't be as big a factor, but they're pouring money into facilities, into players, and they want to get it done. So this is a program that is headed due north. They are going in the right direction. They've got playmakers on both sides of the ball. It's no longer the BYU of old where they were kind of the giant killers. They were fighting with the chip on their shoulder, kind of like the Pirates. This is a powerful program that's got the money behind it.
They are to the Mormons what Notre Dame is to the Roman Catholics. And that is the situation there with BYU coming in. Kevin, let's talk about that Bonesville tradition. Kevin's keys to the game.
Yeah, I'll start out offensively for the Pirates. I think they have to figure out how to run this football. They've got to move the chains and keep time of possession and keep this BYU defense on their heels. So if they're able to run the football, they can get that done. We know what Caden Hauser in the passing game can do. So running will definitely open it up for Caden. So it's going to start there up front, running the football. And then they got to protect the passer. I mean, this is a BYU front that's got a lot of sacks. They really get after you. They blitz well. So offensive line is going to have to play well, protecting Caden Hauser, and he's going to have to make good decisions back there to make sure that he can either throw the ball to our guys or throw it away to keep him turning the football over. Conversely, the Pirates need to get in the face of Bear. This is a guy that's only attempted 38 passes through 2 games. They don't want to throw the football. If they can get some pressure on him up front, get in his face, he will make some mistakes. He'll hold the ball too long. He'll take some sacks. That's where they have to be defensively. So offensively, got to be able to run the ball, to set up the pass, and defensively, got to get after Bear. And then special teams wise, you just can't make any mistakes. Whether it's Maisie or Conrad, whoever's going to be the kicker this week, you got to make those field goals, got to make those extra points. Every point is going to count in this ball game. They're underdogs by 7 points, and this is going to be a fight. It's going to be a struggle for Pirates to be able to move the football. It just is because this BYU defense is so good. So when they get in field goal range, they got to be able to knock them down.
Very good, Kevin. As always, we'll see how this big challenge for the Pirates unfolds on Saturday night. And I look forward to talking with you next week on the Bonesville Pregame Podcast.
Appreciate it, Al.